What's up, witches? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the August meeting of the Coven Book Club. How is everybody? Good, I hope. Yay! So good to see you guys. Welcome. Um, well, it's not your first times here, I know that, but just in case, we are broadcasting on our YouTube channel as well. This is where the replay for this meeting will be available on YouTube, so folks can watch us afterwards. And if folks are new around here and wondering what is going on, my name is Allie. I'm the head witch at BronxWitch HeadQuarters. We have an online portal and a virtual coven community. And the virtual coven community has a whole bunch of things that you can participate in. And one of them is the book club, which is a monthly gathering of us witches to come together and talk about a book that we are reading. And this month's book is Dark Mirror, The Inner Work of Witchcraft by Yvonne Aburrow. And we are coming together to talk about this book, share our ideas, thoughts, major takeaways. We have some discussion points that I have put up on the screen as a way of kind of guiding the conversation, but folks are able to talk about whatever they would like about the book. And if you haven't read the book, that's totally fine as well. We invite you to participate in these meetings because this might be a good way for you to decide whether or not you want to read a particular book, or maybe you don't want to read it at all and you just want like the cliff notes. So meetings are a great way to get the major takeaways for that reason as well. So we will get started with introductions. I will just go through and unmute everyone alphabetically as best I can. I seem to always go slightly out of order, but when you see the unmute notification on your screen, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and say hello. And we ask that you share just your name, your location in the world, and your progress with the book. So I'll get us started. My name is Allie. Like I said, I am the head witch at HQ. I am located in the Bronx, New York, and I finished. Oh my God, I freaking finished. Woo! I often do not finish the book club book, either by choice, because I have just decided that I only want to read certain points, or just because I'm a busy witch. Sometimes I just don't get there, but I got there this time. I finished today. So very proud and excited to talk about it. All right, I'll start unmuting folks.
Hi guys, Betty here from Toronto, Canada, Haudenosaunee land. I'm finished the book too. I had about 20 pages this morning, even had some time to take some notes. Done. Good book, good book. Very, very informative for the newbie like me.
Thank you for being here. Informative for all of us, I'm sure.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Nori, located in West Harlem, and I got to page 195. Surprisingly, I didn't finish the book this month. It's the month of opposites, so let's go. And I did like the book. I do have a lot of thoughts, so for later.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. I think that's great progress personally.
Last but not least, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Shanice. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. I got to page 123 of the book, but it is really good, and it is quite dense, like most of the material that we've been reading over the course of the year. But yeah, so far from what I've gotten through, good stuff.
Thank you for being here, Nisi. Always good to see you. Yeah, no fluff around here, you guys. I try. The books for the most part are new to me too. When I'm making the list, I try to choose books that are like kind of newish on the market, just so that people are excited about it, because I think when it comes to a lot of the older books, the classics, a lot of you guys have already read a lot of those things. So I do try to pick books that are newer. So that means that they're often a surprise to me too. So I'm kind of going off of, the description and maybe reviews from other witches to decide whether or not it would be a good book for us. So sometimes I'm worried, you know, that we're going to get in there and it's going to end up being like kind of crap. So I'm always very like, whew, when it's like actually good, and I didn't really necessarily know that. And this is definitely one of those books. I got the opportunity to talk with Yvonne for my podcast, the Better Witch podcast, for season 2, and got familiar with the book just a little bit because I read the last chapter on inclusive Wicca to prepare for my talk with her, with them, because we were talking about inclusivity in pagan spaces and how to be more inclusive in pagan spaces. And because they touched on that in this book, I did read that chapter, but otherwise I wasn't really sure what to expect in terms of how Yvonne approached the concept of ritual different from, you know, maybe any other book or things like that. So I'm glad that it seems like folks have found it rewarding and useful. I definitely did. Before we get started, I'll just remind everybody that there is a poll to participate in if you are here in the Zoom room. It's just for the participants in the Zoom room. So there is a poll, and I'm just going to, oh wait. Okay, maybe there isn't an official poll. I don't know why it's telling me that the polling isn't active. I think I'm like logged in like 3 places accidentally somehow. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat your vote, there's just a few of us, so it'll be easy for me to keep that organized. And usually we vote for 1 to 5 cauldrons. 5 cauldrons being totally knocked it out of the park, wouldn't change anything. 1 cauldron being would not recommend, did not learn anything from this book. So feel free at some point, you don't have to do it now if you want to like think about it.
It did come up, Allie. The poll, it did pop up, yes.
Oh, yay. Okay, cool. I don't know why it's not letting me like control it or whatever. So I won't be able to end it.
Double Zoom thing we still have going on because I launched the poll. I saw that I had it, so I just went.
Oh, okay. See, look at that. Okay, cool. Got it. Makes sense. Nuri and I are somehow the same person.
Yeah.
On Zoom, I shared my account, and somehow it keeps doing like these like sort of weird.
Remember, it happened with me and Marlene.
Yes. Oh my God, that's right. Marlene was in the Zoom for like months. Yes. Okay. All right. So Nuri, we should keep that in mind for Madame Pamita's class. I want to make sure that we don't have like any issues there. Are you going to be available during that time? Like, are you planning on tuning in? You probably have class during that time.
I have to I'll double check the date to know for sure. But yeah, even today I logged in to Zoom with my own with my own email, and it still connected me to you somehow because I was trying to see if I could like bypass it, but I don't know what's going on.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So I might have to just like delete people from the Zoom just to like make it not crazy, because I don't want Madame Pamita's class to be weird. I need to be able to like make her the host and like do different things. So good to know. I might just like take everybody off and start over. But okay, yay. So there's a poll. Woohoo! So vote in it. I don't know if I'll be able to see it. Nuri might have to tell us what everybody votes for and end it for us. But go ahead and vote in the poll if you have access. If you don't have access, just drop your vote in the chat and I'll be able to see that. Next month's book, I don't have my copy with me. Maybe Betty does. Yay! Okay, I was gonna say Betty usually does. Betty has a copy of Shades of Faith. Let me see. Let me put us on gallery view. Yes, I'm just changing our view. I don't know if that's going to make a difference on the recording, but just in case, I am changing our view. And let me spotlight you, okay, so that everyone can see. Thank you so much for holding it up. Shades of Faith is
and it's nice and thin. It's only 100 pages.
Yes, I can't lie. I'm looking forward to that. Not gonna lie, I was like, wait a minute, only because I'm also reading this really amazing book called Reclaiming Our Community by Majora Tucker, who is the owner of Bronxlandia. which is like an event space here in the Bronx. Nuri and I have both been. It's amazing. It's incredible. And she's really an inspiration for what we want to do with HQ as a community space. And I'm reading her book because she has lots of really great thoughts on how people like us can make an impact in our own neighborhoods and not just flee them when they are difficult to live in, but stay in them and work on them and make them better places for everybody. So I've been kind of lagging in reading that book, and I do want to read it. And it's not that thick either. So 2 thin books in a month, I feel like I can do. So yes, shout out to Crystal Blanton for keeping it short. But Crystal Blanton's book, Shades of Faith, Minority Voices in Paganism, is an exploration of different voices of pagans who are POC, sharing their views. They come from all different traditions. So I think this would be really great for us to read the views of pagans from all different walks of life. It's very small. It should be an easy read for folks. And it's definitely available in the HQ shop. So if you want to grab a copy, you haven't yet, you can use the code Level Up. That is this month's secret code for 15% off when you order. We will be meeting next month, as always, on the 4th Monday of the month at 7 p.m. And other than that, I just want to share with you guys that I am going to be hosting a free webinar on Wednesday at 9 p.m. during the full blue moon called Becoming a Better Witch in 6 months. I'm super excited about it. I've done past webinars on different topics like meditation, on making incense, on making fire cider, different things that I am interested in. But this is kind of like my big one because this is the culmination of something I've been working on for a few years at this point. And it is also an introduction into my 6-month coaching program, which is something that's been a long time in the making and that I've been putting just a lot of energy and effort into really making sure that it is a high value item for anyone who participates, and that I deliver on my promise of making you all better witches in a 6-month time frame. So I'm really excited about it, a little nervous, but I'm really happy that so many folks have signed up. I think we have 65 folks registered so far, and my goal is to get to 100 witches. I want 100 witches in the room on Wednesday because I want to make that type of impact for people. I think that would be cool. So yeah, I'm excited. If you're not able to make it, tell a friend, let them know that it's happening, and you can register for that through the link in my bio on my personal Instagram page at Alicia Kravitz. And if you are looking for the full coaching program, because you already know you want to be a part of it, you can enroll now, and it is available in our online portal right along with all of our other virtual classes. So I hope to see you guys in the webinar or in the coaching program. And then finally, I just want to let you know that there are a lot of really cool things coming up in the portal in the next month or so. We sent out an email to our mailing list, sharing a couple of the highlights from the first half of September with everybody. Nuri will be sending out an email to all of our portal folks. If you are not on the HQ mailing list, but you are enrolled in the portal, you'll be getting an email with that same information shortly. So don't worry, you're going to get that sent to your inbox as well. But I really want to highlight the fact that we have our first guest instructor in the portal, which is super cool. We are going to be getting a class from the one and only Madam Pamita, the owner of Parlor of Wonders. Yes, the author of the Book of Candle Magic, among other books. Madam Pamita is amazing. She's becoming a personal friend and something of a mentor to me. She's one of the witches that I kind of found first when I started like really watching lots of witchy YouTube videos. She has a huge selection of videos on her YouTube because she's been on it for almost 10 years, I think. She's had her shop for like 15 years. So she's a well-versed and very experienced witch, and she has created a class just for us, which is really amazing of her. It's called Candle Magic for Solitary Witches, which, as you know, the portal is a community for solitary witches. So when I was talking to her about it, I let her know that it was important that the class that she brings to the portal take into account that everybody has their own path, their own tradition. We're not all coming from the same background, but most importantly, we're not all beginners. Like, even though a lot of us use terminology like beginner witch or baby witch, I would say that to me, no one in the HQ community is really truly a beginner, because most likely you have already read several books on the different topics of the craft that you like. You've probably watched tons of videos. You probably follow a lot of other practitioners and magicians who you've learned a lot of tips and tricks from. And you just may not have gotten to the point where you're applying all of it just yet, but you've definitely already learned a lot. So I didn't want her to start at like step one with like, what is a candle? Where do you get one? You know what I mean? Which is, some people might need that. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, our community, I think, is beyond that part. Where people really could benefit is hearing an experienced witch talk about, okay, once you have learned that, or you've got a couple books on the topic, or you've watched a few videos on the topic, how can you now start actually doing candle magic? Whether that means making your own candles, dressing them, blessing them, enchanting them, oils and herbs that you might want to use to do that, sigils that you might want to use, writing petitions to go with your candle magic, or maybe even going all the way up to writing your own spells or creating your own candle rituals or candle burning ceremonies. So she's going to be focusing on that stuff, which I think is going to be way more useful for all of us. So that class is available right now. For pre-order, you can enroll in it now and get a little bit more information about what you can expect from the class. And it's going to be taught live. And the live class is going to be happening on Tuesday, September 12th, from 7 to about 9 o'clock. And if you are a Coven community member, which you guys all are, you get to take this class completely for free. So just go. I know, right? Betty's like, what? Yep, you get to take it totally for free.
Remember, I'm unemployed.
Yes, we got you. We got you. The Coven community is a monthly membership, and so we feel like, you know, we want to make sure that there's a lot of value in that space. And the class by itself is $40, but you guys get to take it for free. You'll get the downloads of her PDF for free. So definitely one of the benefits of being in the Coven community. And we plan on doing this every time we have a guest instructor. You guys get to take these classes totally for free. So to access that class, I know June was asking, he was like, I'm trying to enroll and it's asking me to pay. That's because you don't have to enroll in the class. All you have to do is go to the Coven community discussion thread, and at the top where it says events, the same place where you find the link for book club and the link for all of our other offerings, you're going to find the link to the Zoom to go right into the Zoom. So you bypass all the enrollment stuff. You just click on the Zoom on the 12th at 7 o'clock, and boom, you will be a part of the live.
And sorry, that was September 12th?
Yes, Tuesday,
Perfect.
September 12th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes, and we'll have some more emails going out and some more posts on our Instagram to remind you guys of all the details. Yeah. Okay, thank you for your patience. Long announcements, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about some of the exciting stuff going on. But definitely check that email that's going to be coming out from Nuri, because it's going to have pretty much everything happening in the portal in September that you're going to want to know about. Classes that are dropping, events that are happening. Alexis is doing a Fire Limpia ritual live, which is cool just for you guys. So lots of fun stuff. All right.
I will be there Wednesday, Allie, except if baby comes before. We're on baby.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yay!
So it's due the 31st, but
we'll see
anyway.
what happens. We'll see what happens. Well, the
And-
good news is the video will be available for a replay for
And no problem. I'm not allowed at the hospital. So if she goes into labor that day, I probably won't see it for another day or two. So, but it's somewhere in here.
Yeah, so we will record it, and it will be available for a replay, but it'll just be available for you guys for a replay. So we hooked it up. We got you the hookup. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get into the discussion of the book here. I am going to take away the screen share for now. A couple of the points that I've put up is like, how does this book compare or contrast to other books by Wiccan authors? I thought it might be good to talk a little bit about ethics and morality in ritual spaces, because that's a topic that is brought up quite a bit in the book. And then, major takeaways, things that really stand out to you guys, or major critiques. Some things that maybe were glaringly missing, or really big issues for you, that stood out to you. So I will open up the floor to who'd ever like to start the discussion.
I can start. Even though, yeah, I have really been enjoying this book. Just I feel like she has really good like wisdom tidbits. Like I really find a lot of value in like the questions she asks towards like at the end of most chapters, the little exercises she has. I found a lot of her questions to be very like reflective inducing. I don't know, just really made me think and question like where my beliefs are and questioning the why. So I did really value that from this book.
I'll jump in. I have but the smallest critique, and I understand why. This book really reads like a textbook. So getting through this for me has been slightly difficult, but I understand why and the purpose of the book. Because in essence, she's teaching you how to run a coven from her religious perspective of Wicca. So I understand why it has to read the way that it does, but also it reads like a textbook.
Yeah. And I wanted to add two things because yeah, you're right. It does, like, in the positive way, it does a good job of building on itself as you keep working through the book, which I really appreciate. And I want to say my critique on the book. So personally, I don't know. I don't want to be mean, but like I don't think it was well written. I found it very difficult for me to stay engaged in the book, just because it really felt like I was looking at a draft still. Yeah, like I don't know if you guys noticed, there was a lot of sections where like the information repeated a little bit, where like she mentioned it at first and then she kind of touched on it again, but it, at least to me, it felt unnecessary because I'm like, oh no, you already covered this, which caused me to slow down a little bit reading wise. But even despite that, that's why I say I really did. She does have good little tidbits in there when you do catch them, which makes the book itself like a little, I don't know, like a little treasure chest to like find the pieces in.
I liked that. Oh, go ahead, Allie. Go ahead. Nope. She was just very direct, like there was a lot of stuff that she talked about, and it was her point of view, but it was like to the point, and you got what she was saying, especially where equality and respecting everybody. I mean, she hit on that quite a few times throughout the book, and I respected that. It was like it hit home with me. It's like we're all at some level, and whatever level we're at, you have to respect it. We're all from different places. You have to respect it. We all have different beliefs. You have to respect it. So it was nice to read that from my point of view. And I just liked her directness. It was like, yeah, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Just say it. So I did enjoy that part of her writing.
Yeah, I will say two things about Yvonne. First, I can't quite recall. I think they go by they them pronouns. I'm not 100% sure. It may be she they pronouns, or maybe they them pronouns. I'm not 100% sure. I'm gonna try to use they them pronouns just because I feel like I recall that from our podcast taping. And then the other thing is that Yvonne is an academic, master's degree in contemporary religions and spiritualities, and writes from a very like academic perspective, and I think that shows in the writing. So I can definitely understand what Nisi was talking about it being rather dense, and written in a like a paper, basically, like somebody writing, a thesis kind of a way, which probably makes it not as easy to get through as other writers who might have a more casual way of talking. But to that point, and then to what Nuri had to say, I too was like a little bit surprised, especially from somebody who is in academia, at some of the parts of the book that I felt were like rough drafty, and that weren't quite as polished as I would expect. But I think that has to do with maybe less of Yvonne's writing and more of like the publisher of the book. The book is published by the Center for Pagan Studies and the Doreen Valiente Foundation. And I have found that when major publishers are not publishing a book, that the editing process is not as strong, as it is with a publishing house that has like professional editors in place. And I definitely thought you could find that. Like there were little spelling errors and grammatical errors, and there was a more kind of casual structure to it that I definitely think felt like a draft or like a manuscript. And so that polishing, I think, probably has more to do with not having like good editing and like a strong publishing team behind to kind of clean those areas up. So I definitely did notice that. I don't know if I would say that detracted from my overall enjoyment of the book, only because there were so many things in here that I did find really useful and really enjoying, or enjoyable. So that I think allowed me to kind of like brush over that. I think it also made me not feel bad about like skimming some parts, because I was like, well, if we're in draft mode, then I'm just gonna skim. Like I get the gist of some of this, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna read too hard, if like the book hasn't been like polished up like that. But there were a couple of things that like really stood out to me that I thought were kind of cool, and that's where I put my pink tabs. So just a few tabs in this one. But early on in the book, Yvonne was talking about evocation versus invocation. And they said, I regard invocation as one of the key practices of initiatory Wicca. It is not something that should be practiced by the uninitiated, as I believe that a Wiccan initiation prepares the psyche for the process of invocation. And so obviously they're writing from a Wiccan perspective. But in my notes, I wrote, oh no, like Nancy in The Craft. And because that's what I think happened basically to Nancy, right? Like Nancy allowed an actual god to come into her body, and the shop owner was trying. Is that a craft mug? Resting witch face. Oh, I love that. Exactly. I have that all the time. But I was like, oh, I think this is what happened to Nancy in The Craft. And like, that's what the shop owner was kind of trying to say, that like, there are really powerful energies out there. And if you don't have like guidance about what to do with bringing those, powers into yourself, you might not want to go that far. And I thought it was interesting that Yvonne pointed out that maybe one of the benefits of initiation is that it prepares you for what it's like to actually have a deity, a spirit, what have you, enter into your body. I don't know if I agree that like I would go so far as to say that it's something that shouldn't be practiced by someone who isn't initiated. I don't know if I would go that far, because I do think it is personal. But if Nancy had the initiation process, certainly the Wiccan initiation process, which takes like a few years before you get to High Priestess, and therefore a few years before you're invoking spirit or having spirits invoked into your body, I think we would still have Nancy. We wouldn't have lost her. You know what I'm saying? She was not ready for the psychological impact of sharing your body with another being and let it take you over, and it basically took her over completely, and she lost her mind. So I often think about initiation as something that's like beneficial for having community, or getting guidance on how to do things. And one element of initiation that I hadn't thought of that this book points out is that it helps you to prepare mentally for some of the more intense things that you might experience as a witch. And so that was interesting to think about, like, oh, this is another benefit of initiation that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. And with the conversation of what the difference is with evocation and invocation, the first thing I thought of was, and she mentions it in the second paragraph on page 87, but I was also thinking like, okay, but when I invoke the elements, like, am I, like, for a second, I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like, should I not do that? But she kind of addresses it there. And I'm curious what you guys think. If like, are we evoking the elements when we create a circle, or are we invoking the elements if you call them into the circle when you do things?
Well, for that particular section, I had to pull out my Christian notes, because it sounded a lot like what happens in the church where we catch the Holy Spirit. So I consider that an invocation, because you're inviting the Spirit of Christ into your body. And then because you are in the Spirit of Christ, you're safe and protected. You can shout, scream, run, because we Baptists, we test stuff up. So you get to invoke the Spirit that way. Evocation, for me, sounds like inviting a spirit into your general environment. So E for environment, I for invitation into said body. That's how I distinguish those two. And like I said, since this is learning about it from a Wiccan perspective is very new to me, and seeing it in that religious format is new to me, I had to pull it from, again, my Christian experience. So that, again, those terms sound a lot like how we talk when somebody catch the Holy Ghost. That's how I had to put that in terms so I can understand.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Nisi. A lot of times, like when I'm trying to explain to Christians like the different things that are happening in witchcraft, that is something that I talk about. Like Reiki, when people are confused about that, is it evil? I'm like, it's laying on of hands. When they're like, what about trance? What about invoking, being possessed? I'm like, it's catching the spirit. So these things happen in Christian practices and other practices, but they go by other names. And I definitely think that's a great, like, I forget what you call it, like pneumatic device to remember the difference between the two. E for environment, I for invitation, or in for in your body. I have a video on my YouTube about drawing down the moon. It's a ritual that I typically do on the full moon, and in it I explain that to me you have a choice between evoking the goddess into your circle versus invoking the goddess into yourself. And that I recommend that people start with just evoking into your space and seeing how you feel the energy shift or feel things differently. To what Nuri was saying, I personally call in the elements when I cast circle, and also during like my morning prayers, like when people do like the LBRP, I do something I guess kind of similar, but I don't really like banish anything. I'm just calling on the elements. And to me, I feel like you don't have to invoke the elements because they're already a part of us. I feel like we have, like, the elements are different from a spirit or an angel that we don't necessarily carry in our bodies. But I feel like the human body is already made up of the four elements. And so to me, what I'm calling on the elements, I'm evoking because they're already in me. I'm just sort of pulling them out to be like guards in the space. And I usually set up candles or like the actual elements to kind of represent that. But even if I'm out in the park or something like that, I don't need to have like a bowl of water to pull the element of water into what I'm doing, because I feel like it's in my body. You know what I mean? I have air in my body. Like my body is made of earth. My energy, my life force is my fire. So I usually, in my daily prayers, call them like into the space where I'm saying my prayers, and I ask for them to like do certain things for me throughout the day and be there for me in certain ways throughout the day. So I do feel like the elements are maybe a little bit different from other energies that I don't necessarily feel like I have access to at all times, and I do need to actually call them in.
Yeah, you answered the question I didn't ask. Yeah. Like, because I guess like my other line of thought, right? Because she said, or they said in the book that like I don't know if they explicitly said that it could be dangerous, but like it can be, as we, again, Nancy. So my brain was like, oh, is it dangerous if I'm invoking the elements? But like after your explanation, the answer seems like it's no. And I don't think it is, because they are already in me. We are made up of the elements.
For sure. I feel like with the elements too, it's like they are, she was talking about like archetypes and different things like that. And I feel like the elements aren't really that, you know, they're like something else entirely, you know, but yeah, like, but I can imagine a scenario where like, if you're calling on fire and like really calling on the element of fire in your circle, like just make sure you're releasing that like before you go, so that you don't have like a candle explosion or something. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like we amplify those energies when we call on them, whether it's into our environment or into ourselves, either way. But yeah, if you're calling like water into your environment and then you're not releasing it when you're done, like you might have a pipe burst or something like that. So like there's that. I feel like it's dangerous in the reverse, like not in your body because it's already in your body, but like calling these elements into your space could be like more dangerous to your environment, and you'd want to just make sure you're like calling them back in basically to yourself. Oh, and by the way, on the point of like different practices having different names for things, um, catching the spirit, when she was talking about trance possession, is like where I would put that. And in like Santeria, and I think in Lukumi, they call that being mounted. Yeah, they call that being mounted. And the person who is able to do that, not everybody is like able to do that. Kind of similar in Wiccan practices, where it's a practice that the high priest and high priestess pretty much only engage in. The person is called a caballo, which is Spanish for horse, which I think that's so cool because they're literally like being ridden by the spirit, which I thought was like, when I learned that, I was like, oh, I get it.
Now, just for my own state of mind and help me understand, I have been to the Brooklyn Tabernacle. Is it the Brooklyn? I think it's the Brooklyn Tabernacle on Flatbush numerous times with a friend of mine. And I know that when I was there and they had the prayer and worship, I would just start bawling. Is that the Holy Spirit coming into me? Or is that just like, what is that? Is it just me? I mean, it's joyous. I'm singing. I'm in a really great place. And then I just start bawling. And I've always wondered why. And it's not happened just once. It's happened a couple of times at another church here in Toronto, another Pentecostal. And it's like, why am I crying? It's so I'm thinking, is that some form of, just the community, the everybody's prayer is going. I mean, I know it's very moving when they do that, but I just always wondered when that happens, is it Is that the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit coming into me? I was born a Catholic, but I don't follow that religion.
There's not a lot of hooping and hollering in Catholic Church, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
I have a
lot of
thoughts on
hypocrites,
it.
a lot of hypocrites.
Well, listen, that's a universal church thing. I'm just gonna leave that there. So the Catholics are not alone in that one, honey. But not a lot of hooping and hollering in Catholic mass. I have a thought on this, but I'm gonna let the Christian witch take it first.
Hello. No. In all honesty, I would say yes. And another point, since you talked about that experience, which I would personally say would be you catching the Holy Spirit, is just because of our unique experience of being African American. When we catch the Holy Spirit, it turns into running, jumping, shouting, screaming, prayers, hollering. It don't necessarily have to be that. The Spirit can move quite quietly. So it doesn't have to be a show. It's just because of how we are as a people, that's how we express. And you also have to think too, just from a historical point of view, people were dealing with like oppression, people were dealing with racism, slavery. This is kind of the only time that we really get to congregate with each other and express. So that's why you see the showmanship of it all. And I say that in like the utmost respect of what that space is supposed to be for. I say that in respect.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we got the white sheets. We got the white sheets. We're covered. Everything's, I get that. And I mean, when I'm catching that moment, people are falling out around me. Like it's, I know, I've seen it. I've experienced, I've actually brought a friend who's from the Caribbean and she was shocked because she'd never seen it. But I was like, oh, that's common. That's regular. So I do know. And they do it in a very respectful way. Very respectful.
Yeah. And again, what that brings up is another point in the book where she's talking about unverified personal gnosis. So in essence, I can tell you that from my experience, that sounds like the Holy Spirit. But in essence, it sounds like this is an opportunity for you to answer that question for yourself. What do you know spirit to be? How do you feel when you're in that particular space? Because remember, if we're talking about church from that perspective, we're on a holy ground. We're with people of like mind, just like how we would be if we were in like a Wiccan space or performing any other kind of ritual. So go through that process to come to that conclusion, I would say for yourself. But my personal Christian witch, don't make me confront myself, Allie. I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree. Like I feel like her levels of invocation in Wicca are very helpful because even though they are explaining it from a Wiccan context, I think that this is useful for any space, like that whether we evoke or invoke an energy, we have different levels of interaction and like different levels that we open up to. And to me, it feels like when I'm in church and because the same thing, happens to me, Betty, even though I'm not Christian, when I am in a Christian church, and the music gets going and the energy starts moving and people start falling out, like you feel that it's almost impossible to not feel it in your body. So something is happening that you cannot deny, and my lack of devotion to this particular deity known as Jesus does not make me somehow numb to how intense. I mean, it just feels like being washed over with like just waves of energy. It's electric. It's really intense. It's beautiful. It's a great feeling. And personally, that's why I like church even to this day, and will never hesitate to turn down someone's invitation to go. Like I like the experience of feeling that kind of energy moving, and then I use it for my own stuff. But I like to be in it. You know what I'm saying? Some people, there's actually a practice in Santeria called stealing the mass, and I forget how they say it in Spanish. But where they go to mass to get the prayers, get the energy, get all of that, and then take it for whatever needs to be done. So that energy is real. It really is. I would say honestly, like looking at the levels that Yvonne lays out, I feel like maybe what's happening is like the oil and water stage. Um, because in this stage, they say the fourth level is where the deity is in you, but not intermingled with your consciousness. It's more as if they're alongside you inside your body and have just borrowed your voice to say what they have to say. This level is invocation proper, but it is like one of those executive toys with oil and water in a transparent chamber where the oil and water can be shaken up but do not mix. So to me, that feels like a good description of what I feel like is happening when I moved, while that's happening in church, because it's not the fifth level where the consciousness is intermingled or merged with your consciousness. Like I don't feel like I no longer have a sense of myself or my own identity. I know my name, I know who I am, I know where I am. It hasn't yet risen to that level, but I've been in like misas where people have been mounted and they have no idea who they are, where they are. That person that I knew a few minutes ago is gone, and who is in the room now is somebody else entirely. And when that being leaves, oftentimes the person who was mounted has no memory of what happened, and it can go on for hours. And that's not quite what's happening to me. So if you're experiencing something like what I experienced, I would say it's like the fourth level of invocation where I feel like this spirit is definitely in my body to the point where my emotions, the words I'm using, it might make me shout. It might make me want to stand up and clap my hands or dance. It might make me want to embrace people, and things like that. But I'm still fully present and aware that I'm doing these things. I just, outside of this experience, probably would not be feeling this way. So I would say yes, I think you are feeling the Holy
Well, because
Spirit.
I never felt it in a Catholic church. I spent up to the age of 20 in a Catholic church. I can honestly say I have never felt what I felt, in a predominantly Black church. There's probably a couple of me speckled around, right? And I mean, the energy and the vibration and the music, never felt it. I mean, the choir songs in Catholic churches, no, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't stir up anything. You're like, when is this over? Like, it's just, like kneel, sit, kneel, sit, kneel, sit. Like that's it. It just did nothing for me.
I think that goes to what Yvonne was talking about in the very beginning when they laid out the elements of ritual and raising the energy being a key component. Like, I think some religious gatherings miss that part. They do the convening, they create the sacred space. Catholic Church is going to have incense burning. They have a whole incense ritual up and down the aisles with the censer. So they do all of that stuff, but they maybe just don't pay as much attention to the raising the energy part, which is definitely something that is big in the Black church. Like every church service, at some point, we're going to reach a fever pitch of song and dance, or maybe not even song and dance. It might be through the sermon itself, but there's usually a part where the preacher starts to amp it up, and it starts to get, the message starts to get louder, and the call back from the congregation starts to get more intense. And there's usually music, I would say. But either way, I think that might be what is missing from other parts. And I think this is informative for us as witches, because when we're doing ritual, especially solitary witches, because we don't have the benefit of a group to make this happen. So when we are doing ritual by ourselves, raising the energy seems like a key component to actually feeling the presence of the spirit that we are calling on, whether it's an elemental spirit or all the way up to an actual deity. Because I think when we first start doing rituals, it can be a little intimidating, and we might be really focused on the particular details and the items and the things. I know for me, like early on, ritual was very blah. Like it would often kind of like I would do it, but did anything really happen? I don't know. Now it's not like that. Now it's a whole experience. I might be up till 5 o'clock in the morning in my circle. But that's because I've learned to raise the energy so that I can connect. And I don't know, I mean, I guess I kind of understand the science of it. I don't know if I could like explain it really, but there's something about raising the energy that allows you to really connect with whatever it is you're trying to connect with. And
We go back
that
to Matt's book where we're going into beta and all of that, like those principles. Because I taught somebody recently, taught them some school. They were coming out. I'm like, hold on, look at this paragraph. And I read the paragraph to them. I'm like, oh yeah, that was what I was feeling. I'm like, I've been school. I told him I was a scholar because he was taking credit for my new spirituality. I'm like, no, I've just been on this journey for a long time. I'm just getting to where I need to be now. And you had nothing to do with it. It's all on me.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Like maybe there's something about the different hi baby. Maybe there's something about the different brain patterns that come from entering into those different states that makes us more open or receptive to coexisting with another energy. I don't know, but it definitely makes a huge difference. Like a ritual without building up that energy, it's like, yeah, I did the steps, but I didn't really feel anything. So,
Was that, Allie, going to some of the stuff that you've shared with us? So, full moons, new moons, and your rituals, and having, your cleansing bath or fasting for the day, you're building up that energy so that when you get to the evening to do your ritual, you've been focused on that. So that all kind of lines into that.
yeah, I would say either like building up the energy or like shifting my own energy. Like when I'm in a formal circle and I'm performing because like we say rituals and then a ritual. So there's like rituals just meaning like things you do regularly versus like a ritual, which might be like a more formalized thing. So I would say when I'm doing a ritual, I want to build the energy. And so I'll do that in different ways. For me, it's a lot of like chanting, meditation, and music. That's kind of usually how I build energy, though from time to time, depending on the spirit, it might feel right to dance, but usually I'm sitting down. But my rituals, like my regular practices, those are less about building up energy and more about like shifting my energy for the timing of the month. So my new moon rituals, I fast because I want my personal energy to also feel like a restart. So that the energy of the environment around us because of the moon restarting is restarting, and I want to align with that, and I also want to restart. And then when the full moon comes, I feel like I'm really my emotions are more intense, and there's a lot more energy kind of just flooding over me and in the world, and I want to echo that by like washing myself with that energy. So I'll draw down the moon into my bath water and then pour it over myself so that I can also feel that fullness that the full moon brings. So yeah, not quite raising my energy, but like shifting is more my focus with those. But definitely in a ritual that I'm doing, like if I'm doing a Samhain ritual or something, I'm gonna want to raise the energy so that I can feel whatever it is I'm calling in. That's me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about before we break out into breakout rooms, like ethics and morality in ritual, because that is, a major focus in the book. There's a section on ethics of magic and on morality, but I feel like it comes up quite a bit. And one thing that I think is interesting, and not surprising, is a lot of reference to Wiccan ethics and Wiccan morality. And I think sometimes Wiccan authors can forget a little bit that not everybody is Wiccan, and so they will talk about things or make statements in ways that make it seem like it's what everybody believes. An example of this is on 137. Yvonne says, there are ethical considerations when using magic, just as there are with physical means of producing change. These are mainly around consent and minimizing harm to others. And while I personally, as a Wiccan, do feel this way, I think that it's important to note that not all magicians feel this way. Like, not all magicians actually do think that there are ethical considerations in magic, that there are a lot of magicians who don't think that ethics or morality are universal principles, but rather socially constructed things that you can either subscribe to or not subscribe to. And the idea of good and bad and right and wrong are socially constructed ideas that we often talk about as if they like exist in the universe. But you know, as much as my happy little Wiccan heart would like for that to be the case, I actually disagree with this, and I don't think that it's a general statement that there are ethical considerations when using magic. I think you can decide to practice in a way that is ethical and give consideration to the morality of your society when you do it. But I also think that it's just as valid if you don't, even though that might be a little scary, you know, to think about. But I just think it's important to understand the difference between the things that we make up as people and that we subscribe to as people and the universe as a whole, because there are a lot of things that we make up and we subscribe to that I want us to subscribe to, but I don't want us to think that they're a universal principle that apply to everybody. It's a choice that we make, and we, as much as we have to respect other people's religions and traditions and all of that stuff, we also have to respect that there are witches who are not ethical and don't think that the two go together and don't care to incorporate the morality of the day into what they are willing to do with their cauldrons. And yeah, it's like kind of scary to think about sometimes, but I also think that those witches are deserving of respect and acknowledgement as well. Yeah, so that was one example of like a Wiccan author kind of making statements that very much come from their Wiccan worldview that not everybody holds. And they didn't really do a great job, I think, of explaining that like this statement is very much a Wiccan viewpoint.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And I also found it interesting. I actually liked how she said it on page 138. She says, I have always felt that ethics are a bottom-up approach to behavior, where your ethical choices spring from your ethos, whereas morality was a top-down approach, where morals were arbitrarily imposed from above by a deity. And I agree with her. I like how she did that approach of like ethics are bottom up, morality's top down, and it really made sense for me. And sort of just to add comments to what you said earlier about like practitioners having ethics or not having ethics or morals. I like to think of it instead of like good and bad, there's like those creative energies in the world and then destructive energies in the world. But even then, I would argue you could even say that's one and the same. Like what is what? Because I actually recently like heard this somewhere where it said, even though we like to pretend, well, not pretend, we like to say we have our ethics and our morals and things, but if you really kind of look at it, things are good when they benefit us. Things are bad when they specifically hurt us. And like, then was it ever good or bad, or is this just subjective and that whole conversation? But yeah, I sort of see the world in that way. Who knows? Creative, destructive, they're both and they're either. So it's a complicated topic.
I will say, Nuri, just if you want to be super confused or like give your brain an exercise, there is a very good book called The Genealogy on Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche. You've probably heard of Nietzsche. And The Genealogy of Morals is not a very big book, but it's a very dense book. And Nietzsche argues that morality actually is from the bottom up. From society. We think of it as coming from the top down, but it's actually the people at the bottom who look at what the people at the top do and say that's good or that's bad. And then that becomes what society views as good or bad. It was interesting to read that. But I understand where Yvonne is coming from with this, top down, bottom down kind of idea. I still think this fits. That's just something to kind of tickle your brain stem with if you ever get a chance to read that. But to your point, I thought it was interesting that Yvonne had this sort of like, do good, try not to harm people kind of idea, because they clearly understand that things that seem polar, like masculine and feminine, in a lot of ways might actually be one and the same. So I was like, okay, well, I think you get it, but I think your wickedness just makes it so that you keep sort of reiterating certain ideas that you might, after being a Wiccan for so long, don't even really realize are perhaps more unique to your worldview than it is to others. Because at the end of the chapter 139, they say, my criterion for deciding whether anything is right or wrong, right or not, is, does it harm anyone? Of course, it is impossible to completely avoid harm, but we can and should reduce the harm caused by our actions. And I was like, well, says you. And what is harm and what is hurt? If something that is harmful is just what harms you or harms someone else, but maybe it benefits you or benefits someone else, then who's to say? Like almost everything is like that. There are very few things, unless somebody goes and is like, I'm going to pick a random stranger and I'm going to like hex them for life, but usually it's not like that. Usually you are doing something harmful, quote unquote, to somebody in order for it to benefit you or somebody else. So I think it's a very Wiccan thing to kind of think of harm and not harm in such a bold way, and even more so to go so far as to say you should not be harming people, because that's like, we don't kind of get to say. It's a recommendation, but not really a should.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more point, where I heard somebody say a lot of, like you just said it too, a lot of the things we as humans think is like good are actually bad, like how we're hurting the environment, how we're doing this, like people being like, oh my God, it's so good, I have money now, I can afford a private plane for my family and do whatever, but then you're like doing harm in other ways to the environment and all that. So then that brings up that whole question, is our definition of good even the real definition of good?
Well, a little off of that topic, I just want to point out one thing that I did really like. I mean, there were several things that I liked, but one like concise thing that I thought was cool is on page 238 when Yvonne talks about making an altar. I loved this. Their coven came up with 3 rules for how to lay out a working altar, and I don't think I've ever seen these particular types of rules, and I thought this was super cool, because usually it's like, oh, to make an altar you need this type of a table, or maybe a tablecloth, or you need water or candles or da 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 da. And they were like, it's your altar, it's your choice. That's 1. 2, put the things you need first in the front so you can get them easily. And 3, put the candles at the back so you don't burn yourself. And I was like, yes, thank you. I like that. Those are like the 3 most important, like very practical points that have nothing to do with how you set up your altar. in like a, spiritually accurate or religiously accurate way, and are just like real life things to remember. And I've learned those the hard way of like laying it out where the candles are in the front and you're like, oh shit, trying to reach over to get stuff.
But Allie, in some of your videos in the previous, when you would show us some of your altars on YouTube, your candles were by your curtains, and they used to make me nervous because in my conception, in my depth conception, I'm like, those curtains are right there. So
I know. They do look like that. They
may be far back.
They are kind of close. I know exactly what candles you're talking about too, because they're right over there. And those are my working candles, and they are actually not real candles. They are lucid candles. So they're not real wax. It is a real flame, but they're not real wax. They're like a solid thing. I'm obsessed with these candles. I have to call them and be like, yo, sponsor me, because like if the witches learn out about these candles, it's a wrap.
They're not
like,
the battery operated ones in the headquarters.
No, they're real candles. They work like an oil lamp though. You lift off the top and you fill it with an oil lamp. They have their own special liquid, and it has a cotton wick, and you put the top back on and you light it, and it's a real flame.
Don't know if that's less dangerous or more dangerous.
Okay, so it's less dangerous because like there's no falling candle. Like the candle can't go anywhere. It literally is in a static position. And there's a barrier between the flame and everything because you have this like hard plastic outside. But then also those candles I never leave unattended. Those are my illuminating candles, and they only get lit when I'm in ritual, which is I'm casting circle around that table, and they get put out when I close the circle. But thank you. That is an excellent point. One of my hoodoo teachers was like, when it comes to candle safety, you just want to think about two things: what's under the candle, what's above the candle. And a curtain is absolutely like the number one thing you don't want anywhere near a candle. Also in the camera, I think it probably looks closer than it is. It's probably like 6 inches away. But yes, that is like my riskiest candle layout.
But those are old videos. Those are way back.
Yeah, they're still there. They're still right by the curtains. So if ever there's like an incident with fire, you'll know why. I take a chance with those.
Don't put that in the universe. No.
Oh no, right? But yeah, that stood out to me. And then I did want to touch on, before we go into our breakout rooms, ritual nudity and intercourse. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I tried to read the chapter, but I'm celibate. I had to go next.
You didn't even read the chapter. You were like, nope, not for me. Can't do it. What did anybody else think? Because I know that that's a part of Wiccan rituals, and it's definitely a part of like the Wiccan rituals that people get, that like
getting toasty talking
want to
about
criticize. Huh?
You're getting toasty just talking about it.
I know, right? I was like, whew.
Where's that blow fan? You need your blow fan.
Yes, I need my Yoni fan. It's in the shop. Yeah, no, when I was reading through that, I definitely was like, oh, okay, interesting, because I've never personally experienced it. Even being a Wiccan, that's one of the things about being solitary is I haven't participated in any Wiccan rituals that happen like behind closed doors. I've only been a part of like the public rituals, which are usually just Sabbath related. The outer court and friends and family are usually invited to those. They're more of like a potluck. And there's usually a ritual happening where the initiated members actually make a circle and do the ritual, and everybody gets to like watch and stuff like that. But I've never, aside from some rituals where the high priestess has been topless, I have not participated in anything where the ritual has been fully sky clad, and certainly where there's been any like initiations or anything through intercourse. I have done rituals by myself sky clad, and I love it. Personally, I love it, especially after my spiritual baths. It's just really beautiful to just like drip dry and like not have any cares in the world, and just kind of feel, the air on my skin, and just like be in that moment. And it's also very nice to not have any shame like around my body or anything like that, and be by myself and know that the only things watching are the spirits that love me and that also don't have a body. So what do they care about what parts of my body are jiggling around? And I really like that feeling personally, but I've never done it with others, and I don't know. Like I can see now why proper covens really are families. And in one of my notes, like in the margins, I said like, oh, this is actually kind of sounds like a polyamorous like relationship kind of in a way. Like it sounds like more of an open kind of space where like relationships are not so roughly defined, and it's more about what role do you play in the ritual at that given moment, as opposed to like, I'm your boyfriend, this is my so and so, where it's just like we're all just beings and we're serving different roles and we're raising energy and doing different things. um so I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of knowing a group of people on that kind of level, where I would like love them so much and be so comfortable and open with them that I would want to do ritual without my clothes on or be a part of like anything more than that. But I definitely, I mean, I love my shop witches. I love you, Nuri, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. You know, I was like, wow, that's like a really intense level of like familiarity, before I think I would be ready for anything like that. But it was really interesting to read about how it can go down. Any thoughts? Y'all getting
Yeah,
moody?
I didn't not read the chapter. I just, there was like skims, you know, so I did pick up a few little nuggets, but you know, being over 3 years of celibacy, I just, sex is not on the radar.
That is hilarious. As far as being skyclad, I'm with you, Allie. Like I've done it in my home. Like only Jesus is watching me, and the spirits and my ancestors are watching me, and that is okay. I would possibly be open to that idea, only because I mean, like you said, if it's a coven, if it's like we ride or die, I put those people, if I have those relationships with those people up there with like my best friend who I would not feel any shame, fear, and she's also feminine presenting. So I feel like I maybe would be more comfortable with those of us that identify with vaginas because we all got the same parts. It may feel a little bit more familiar, I guess. You start adding penises in, then of course, because the way we've been socialized, you think about sex and intercourse, and it's like, no, no, safety first, no.
I
I love that we both at the same time were like, "Meh,
No.
stranger
yeah, I've done Skyclad by myself. And I don't know what this will say about me. Yeah, I would do Skyclad with the coven. Yeah, and I would do it with guys and girls. And I think I'd also would have sex with other people in the coven. Just because I don't know. I've heard other witchy YouTubers talk about it too, specifically Thorn Mooney. And I don't know, like ever since I've learned about Wicca, even though I've never like pursued further with Wicca, I am growing increasingly interested in possibly joining a Wiccan coven, just because the more I learn about it, and me being the structured person that I am, I really like how things are structured. I really do see the meaning of why they're doing these things, and I really agree with it. I feel like it really helps tap into something that's very hard to tap into, and just being like a mundane person and like, you know, being in those like ooh kind of situations. And personally, yeah, I really hope to actually in my lifetime to experience that.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I think that for me, like, it's so funny too because like I'm saying this and like I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. Like I have been to a sex club before, like like an all out like public sex club, like everyone's nudie, there's intercourse happening, there are Nisi's jealous. I have experienced this before in my life, and I went by myself, believe it or not. So like, yeah, so like but I think what's interesting is, for me, that experience was all about the sex of it. It was, I am going because I want to have sexual experiences with strangers. Like, I want to explore. I want to be open in this way, and I want to be around other people that are also open. And then ritual for me is like a very non sexual thing. Like, and so I think what it comes down to is it's hard for me, and this is probably really judgmental. It's hard for me to imagine being in a co-gendered space and have those who identify as men or assigned male at birth to be able to not sexualize it, I think is my concern. So I think I would feel way more comfortable for a ritual to be with all of female presenting or people identifying as women, because I feel like I can trust those beings more to be able to go through a whole ritual without clothing on, and to even engage in sexual intercourse and not have it be about the sex, and the focus really genuinely be on what is accomplished by doing this. And I don't know why that even makes like that much of a difference to me, but for some reason I think maybe it's the shame factor, where I feel like if people are looking at me as a sexual object, then I feel like I need to look sexy. Whereas if beings are just looking at me as a being, then I don't have to be sexy, even though we are having sex, which might seem strange to some, but I feel a distinction there. So I think that's where my hesitation comes from, says the girl who's been to a sex club.
I will say, as a queer person, if I was in an only woman circle, you could argue I'm thinking about sex too. Like, there would still be an issue, right? So I just want to make that a point. And at least for me, in my experience, that's why maybe that's why I might be more open for both ways, and just my experiences too. But something to consider when thinking.
Now Betty's hot.
First of all, jealous, Allie, Jesus. Yes, ma'am.
New York City is a wild place to live. I'll say that.
Being a bartender, I bet you met some interesting people.
No, I've got to experience some really wild things. I wasn't bartending this night. I was out at a bar with a friend who wanted to go to this wild show. It was called like the House of Bizarre or something like that. And we watched a woman pierce her clitoris on the stage. It was very interesting culmination of her show, very intense, but also really cool and like kind of beautiful too. Like the way she did it, her show was just like really beautiful. So it wasn't gory, but it was very much like you get to that moment, and I was just like, "You braver than me, sis. You braver than me." But it was cool. But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just to be funny and be on a random note, I feel like I know I have the warrior goddess archetype, because my first thought when we first started that part of this discussion was like, you better die with it. You better die with it if it goes down. Die with it. How do you enter the circle with perfect love and perfect?
What happens in the circle stays in the circle.
It would definitely have to be like a everybody check your cell phones at the door kind of thing. Like, I do not want to see my cellulite on TikTok a week later or something like that. But yeah, I'm glad that Yvonne talked about it, because I think that I have definitely heard about it referenced a lot. People have talked about it and things like that. But I think Yvonne did a really good job of explaining why it happens and how nudity, sexuality, and sex are different. in ritual spaces and some of the things to consider in this space. And I thought that she gave great points about what to look out for red flags. You know, sexual intercourse being a part of the initiation process maybe sounds a little not so great because there's an automatic power difference that's not really conducive to proper consent. Having it be required is maybe a red flag, like being able to opt out, whether it's because you're menstruating or because you just don't feel like being fully nude or what have you. I think
What if someone wanted to be Wiccan and needed to go through this, the orientation and the rituals and the rites, and let's say they're a victim of incest or they've been attacked, sexual assault. These things are not going to be easy for someone to be as willingly open to do those, but then what? They can't be Wiccan in that,
well, no, I mean,
in that cup.
yeah, well, those are two different things. Nobody can stop you from being Wiccan. That's a personal choice. Like just like nobody can stop you from being Christian.
No, but I mean,
You
like
may
in a
not.
coven where they have these rites and rituals, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that would depend coven to coven. And I guess Yvonne's point is if that coven would not allow you to participate or move on because you were not willing to participate in whether the nudity or the intercourse or anything else, then that is, in their opinion, an unethical coven. And there's no like ruling body to make the coven go away or take them out of commission or anything like that. So you would just have to decide whether or not that felt unethical to you. And then unfortunately, that would, but I kind of feel like if they would force a person to engage in certain things like that, regardless of what they're going through, that coven's probably doing other things that wouldn't sit well with you either. So I kind of can't imagine that like you would love the coven, everyone in it, and like everything they did would just like sing well, in your spirit, and then there'd be just this one creepy thing. Like they would probably be doing other things that were taking away autonomy from individuals that would also be red flags. There's almost never just one red flag. And again, red flag for some people because ethics, what are they? But yeah. So I don't want us to go too late. I do want us to have our breakout room session. And so we'll do that just for like 5 minutes. We'll just split up into two groups and just get an opportunity to get to know each other better and share anything that we maybe haven't shared so far. But we just shared quite a bit. And if there's anything else, and remember what happens in breakout rooms stays in the breakout rooms. So we will repeat them when we come back. But we'll just spend 5 minutes together in the breakout rooms with each other. And I'll get those set up right now. All right. Hi. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your time in the breakout rooms. I know I did. And I know, right? I'm like, but can't talk about it. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed, got to know each other a little bit better, shared some fun stuff with each other. And we're going to wrap up the meeting here. I just want to remind everybody that this month's code is Level Up, LVLUP, which you can use for 15% off on products in the shop, whether you're in person or online, and on classes. I always try to remind people of that, but just in case you don't realize, you can use that same code to get 15% off of all the classes in the portal. So you guys are going to get live free access to Madame Pamita's class, but there are classes that are coming to the portal that will be available for purchase, like Les's White Baths class is coming and things like that. And you can use that code for 15% off. So take advantage for sure. And if Betty wouldn't mind doing the honors of holding up next month's book once again, thank you so much. Shades of Faith, Minority Voices in Paganism, which is edited by Crystal Blanton and is an anthology of several different POC pagan writers, is our book for next month. It's available in the shop. You can also get it on Amazon. It's a nice thin read. So if you haven't gotten it by the start of the month, you should have plenty of time to catch up by the time we get to the meeting on the fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. And yeah, I think that's everything. Are there any questions or final comments? All right.
No,
Well, thank
see you
guys.
Wednesday.
Yeah, see you Wednesday, everybody who's able to come. And if not, as long as you register, you will get the link to the replay when it is over. So if you're not able to be there in live time, register anyway. That way you can watch it later.
Okay, so I sent you back a reply of the screen grab that I got once I registered. And down in there, there's a link in that screenshot. Is that the link for the webinar?
Nope, that's the link to share it with your friends and let other
Okay.
people know about it. That's just a link to register. Before the webinar goes live, you will get an email from me with the actual link to tune in. I think I'm going to play around with StreamYard instead of Zoom, because I think that's going to allow me to do like a fancy overlay and like,
But
how when I
do
do
we
the
have to
podcast.
have that application?
No, when you, just like Zoom, you don't have to actually have the application. As long as you have the link, you're able to access
Okay.
the meeting.
Because
Yeah.
I got the new fancy computer now. I just got to make sure I got everything on it.
Yes, especially StreamYard, because StreamYard's different from Zoom. Zoom is like an app. It's its own standalone software. StreamYard operates out of your web browser. So it's a website itself. It doesn't have its own app anyway. So there's no app to download. So yeah, so it's just like the, remember when we did the behind the scenes for the podcast tapings for season 1 and season 2, and it was just like a StreamYard link? Same thing. It'll let you into the room. So yeah, so I'm playing around with that. So we'll see what happens, but you will all get emailed the link shortly before it goes live. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or anything comes up, just drop a comment in the Coven community. You can drop it right into our discussion space, which is the book club discussion space. That's where we can talk about book club in between sessions. So if you have thoughts on this book, thoughts on the next book, or just general questions, you can drop them there and I will make sure to get back to you. And it's a great way also to interact with each other. If you have any further thoughts that you didn't get to share, that's the space to do it. So I will see you guys in the Coven community and hopefully in our next month's meeting. Have a great night, everybody. Blessed be.
Good night, everyone.